Welcome to Save Every Universe. I'm one of your hosts, Robbie. I just want to say Happy New Year, listeners. Thank you for your continued patronage and for your listening. We've grown a lot over the last year, so we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Due to some weather that stopped Alec from getting back to the recording studio in time, we are going to do a save point this week, and then we will be back with you the following week with one of our guests. So please enjoy this episode about video game openings. It was one of Alec's favorite episodes that we did last year, and he thought it would be great for you guys to give it another listen. So please enjoy.
On this episode, we get started on a good foot.
The best foot.
Best foot forward.
We rise with the early bird, so we can get the worm. What are we even talking about?
Welcome to Save Every Universe. I am a former Pinkerton investigating a mysterious city in the sky. And if you don't draw first, you don't draw at all.
Nice. My name is Robbie. I'm a former warrior and now refugee who's fled to Kirkwall to escape the Blight and now must make a life for my family.
Huh, that's a good one.
Do you know that one? I wasn't sure if you get it or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that for a sec.
Who were you last week?
Last week I was Nadine Ross from Uncharted 4 and Uncharted 4 Lost Legacy. If you missed it, we talked about, our best gaming moments, favorite titles from kind of a wrap-up episode from 2017. Lost Legacy was one of my favorites, one of yours as well. And so I was Nadine Ross. Who were you?
I was Luke Skywalker. I was just Luke Skywalker. Easy.
Really?
From Star Wars Battlefront. From Battlefront 2.
The way you phrased it, I thought it was like a...
You play a mission that takes place after Return of the Jedi.
Force Unleashed.
Just Luke Skywalker. This was a lob, dude. Just a standard Star Wars reference.
Swing and miss.
I'm not dragging you into the ECU on this. Just a standard... Yeah, there's a really cool... You get to play a mission as him in Star Wars Battlefront 2, and it takes place after Return of the Jedi.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Which is super cool.
It's hard. It's actually harder to spot those as you're recording and thinking about what you're going to say next. To know to process it and to be smart and not be an idiot about and also guessing the other person.
Not screw up your own. While you're at it. Yeah. You actually get to play a mission as Han Solo post Return of the Jedi too. Which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So today we are talking as it is the New Year. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
There's a lot of enthusiasm in that.
Happy New Year!
Very nicely done. So, in light of the New Year, we are talking about the best video game openings, those first opening scenes that make you go, holy crap, this is going to be a fantastic ride. What have you on the docket today, Robbie?
Yeah, some games really it's like a magic where they pull you in, you're hooked right out of the gate or relatively right out of the gate, and they do this magical formula of hooking you and
making you care about the character really quickly, making
you're invested.
Yeah.
And so I thought
that's the right word for it, that you immediately feel invested in the game, that you have to keep going, you want to see where it goes.
Yeah, so I made a list of my favorite games that I at least came to mind.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to talk about maybe what works for them, because they're not all the same and they don't all work for the same reasons.
Right. There are a few distinct things that I have found that I don't like, which I'm sure are just personal preference. But yeah, what was one of the top ones that came to your mind?
In Mass Effect 2, one of the best openers I've ever seen. You play this quick mission, you're running through the ship, and then you die. And it's the first 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
It's a sequel, so I've already played as this hero for a whole game, and they just kill him. Then they bring you back to life. But it's... I remember I just stared at the screen. I think I've said this in other episodes where I was just
possible?
He's dead, and then it just says Mass Effect 2 on the screen. I was what?
Yeah.
But I was immediately oh, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And it was powerful for me because I love the Mass Effect series, but 1 wasn't my favorite, and I kind of begrudgingly played 2.
Right.
I was it was pretty good.
And it was, by some people's standards, the best of the series.
Right. It may be my favorite. I liked 3 a lot too, but I didn't even play it when it first came out. It was platinum hits, and I was nah, fuck it. I guess I'll play it now.
Yeah.
And then after that opening, I was I waited too long. This is magical. I think Final Fantasy VII's intro.
Oh yeah, that was on my list too. They did the pacing of it was right. Anything where something opens with a train going,
and
it just, you immediately have an energy and a momentum about it.
Yeah, and if you remember the pan, it's you see the girl on the street, selling flower. You see Eris. Eris. I guess it's Aerith, but whatever. You see her, and then it pans out, shows the whole city, and the musical score is this big blasting moment.
Well, it goes from soft and tender, and then it accelerates.
Yeah. And the music matches it, and then it starts with this kick and bass line, and then zooms in on the train.
But one of the cool things about that I like, and this is one of the common denominators that I found, is that you jump off the train and you immediately go into combat. There's no hand holding, which is one of my beefs with a lot of, because one of the games that is revered for its great opening is Final Fantasy VI, but it's all just like story, and then like it's a long walk while the credits go, and the music is good, and all that. And I get that. I mean, it is cool, but for me personally, like I want no hand holding, throw you into the mix, which is kind of what you're talking about Mass Effect.
It's going down.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome. It's on.
Yeah.
Like, hope you're ready. Like, we're not here. Like, you're playing a video game. This is not real life. Like, let's do this.
Yeah.
And you're right.
And they just kind of assume that you know enough about like X jumps or whatever, that it's like you're going to survive this initial encounter, and then we'll teach you some stuff as you go along.
Well, and if you think about it, in 7, like the first enemies, you just attack.
Yeah, and it's
they
over.
assume you can select the word attack.
But you immediately, even if, because like
guy.
I hadn't really played any other Final Fantasy games before I played 7 for the very first time, and it was a nice introduction though to like the combat system and magic and attack and items, and like you kind of got the gist of how it was going to work.
Right. And they still kind of like feed it to you slowly, but
it's not like
intense.
it's not like a window that's like now press attack.
No.
It was like you jumped in and you played the game.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, you could die, you could get a game over.
Right.
It's not like they guaranteed your victory.
And so that was one of the, that one came to mind immediately, just partly for the opening of the train and the energy and like the momentum that it immediately had. But part of the mechanics of it is that they threw you in right away.
Yeah.
Uncharted 2 is another one.
Yeah, that was on my list as well.
Where you wake up in a train. You don't even know right away. It's like a close-up of Nate Drake and he's injured. And then it like you sort of get like as it opens up and the camera pulls back, it's a train dangling off a cliff that you have to hold on. And then it goes back. And that's like the halfway point of the game, I think.
Right.
Jumps
when you
back.
come back to it. Yeah.
And then you have to like work up to figure out like how you got there.
Yeah.
So cool.
They do like a Tarantino kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was cool. I wasn't really playing PlayStation much at that point. So I had played Uncharted 1 and that was it. And again, I know you like the Uncharted games. I wasn't like wild about 1.
Yeah.
And at the time that I played it, the remasters hadn't come out.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, whatever. Then I got my PS4 and it came with the Uncharted collection.
Yeah.
And I just started it too, and I hadn't played them before.
Yeah.
And I was like, Alex always talking about these.
Yeah.
And then
2 in particular did a lot of that stuff right.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Again, I was like, holy shit. Like, I was freaking out. I was like, why am I on a tree? What is happening? Like, and like, he's like bleeding. He slips on stuff when he's trying to climb out because he's wounded.
And he's not climbing at his normal fast pace. It's like struggling to like hold onto a pipe as it swings out over the crevice. And
I had played Uncharted 1, so I knew it should have been quicker.
Yeah.
So I was at least enough of a fan to go, this is bad. Like, we're in a bad place right now. Yeah. So I was
and the final moment where the train starts to slide off and you barely make it to the cliff, and
it was such an epic set piece. And again, like, they didn't say like try and climb here, or there was no like tutorial.
Well, and if you were a fan of the series, to come from like all like the jungle Nazis stuff that was like the first game, to be like in this like snowy world with like cliffs, and it was a very different Uncharted experience right out of the gate.
It was.
Yeah,
it was really.
That's one of my favorite openings. Yeah.
That's what got me into the series. I mean, that's what kept me playing through the rest of them. Was just that kind of chasing that moment in some ways. But
even 4 didn't do it as well as 2 did.
No, and I actually really liked.
And they did
4.
a similar thing there with like the boat coming in and they're getting attacked, and they threw you in, and it was a really good opening. But for some reason, they did 2 just right, and there was a magic to it.
I think 2 had that extra air of desperation.
Yes,
4 kind of has like a what's going on,
and you have your brother with you, and it's there's more of a.
But I felt desperate and alone, and like
immediately like Mass Effect 2. Immediately you're like on the verge of death. Or, I mean, in Mass Effect you actually do die, but
you don't die. There's no Lazarus Project in Uncharted.
But I think that's one of the things that makes a video game opening so good, because video games are inherently it's not a movie like we talked about in our movies episode. It's not a passive thing that you're just watching and consuming. It's the virtue of gaming is that it's interactive and you participate. In my opinion, there are exceptions, but for the most part, to just show a movie as your intro to a game is incredibly lazy.
Right.
And you should use the media to its fullest and put people interactively right into the hot seat out of the gate.
Actually, speaking of that, like Half-Life 2 is one of my favorite openings as well. And it's not because actually it picks up really quick, but not like the run and gun adrenaline pumping, but you're in like an internment camp.
It's still interactive though, and it's like
you can pick stuff up. You've got guards like knocking trash and like pick that up, and they're like being really mean, and they'll beat you with their clubs. You feel
if you
immediately
get too close to them, they'll be like back off,
and they'll like give you the hey, back up, and then
keep moving,
and like it's scary. Like I was like, what I don't
And
feel
coming
like a
from
hero.
Half-Life 1, it was like you were immediately in this other world, and it was like, yeah, in an immersive, interactive way, you were just sort of trying to put the pieces together of what the hell happened.
Right. I think even if you didn't play Half-Life 1, you're immediately like, what has happened to Earth?
Yeah.
Like, what's happened to humanity?
Yeah.
Because it seems like these guys are humanoids at least. Like, I don't know if they're human or not, but... And I think the Combine are human ultimately, aren't they?
I think they are, and I think they've just sort of like sold out to the benefactors or whatever.
Yeah, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
You just... And they feel like that foreign alien power, even though they're probably humans.
Right.
And it's intimidating and immediately drew me in as like a... What's happened to humanity? Like, I couldn't wait to overthrow them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all of that walking through, getting your crowbar, getting hunted by the Combine.
Well, and even when you first go to the lab and you see Dr. Kleiner and Barney and stuff like that, even though it's like sort of narrative and that kind of stuff, it's all interactive 100% of the way, and they know when to shut up. And it's just sort of like you get enough of the story in pieces as you're moving through the world and trying to survive, and that kind of. It's interactive though 100% of the way,
and it still doesn't really feel hand-holdy. Like I at least felt scared and vulnerable and like
you're desperate. Right out of the gate, you're like running across rooftops and dodging bullets and
getting shot at, and you could die actually because I tested it. I was like, they won't really kill me; they'll kill you.
Yeah.
So like you're desperate, you're vulnerable, and you're like in this very dire situation.
Yeah.
Kind of a classic one. And if I didn't bring it up, I bet you would. But Resident Evil 1.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you put that on your list, but it's got that like mystery of like what's going on here, but like everything leading up to, and I guess it could take.
Because when Resident Evil 1 first came out, zombies weren't a huge in vogue thing, and it wasn't. You really, even if you knew it was like a horror game or a quote zombie game, because it like that wasn't even a thing. Zombie game. It was a horror game, and
survival horror.
Seeing that zombie for the first time that turns at you, running through as the dogs are chasing you, that had a little bit of a cinematic, but it was pretty short to the point, and then they threw you into the game.
Then you're in the game, and you're like in this creepy mansion, and you're like, but it's not like adrenaline pumping, it's creepy.
Yeah.
And you're like, what's...
You're scared to go in every next room.
And they always do the door cinematic, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go in here. Like, just right out of the gate, you're like scared but curious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at least for me, it was like, should I turn this off? I want to know what's over there. I think like I want a gun or I want other stuff, but like I don't know if I want to keep going. And I don't play horror games as we've established, right? But, I played the old Resident Evil games, and that was a cool tale telling mechanic. That I couldn't help but like be drawn in by this whatever dark, sinister house. You know.
So when I think of opening scenes, I think of Metal Gear Solid 1. That opening scene of sneaking in and going to the elevator shaft and infiltrating. Like you got a little bit of snippet of story over your Kodak thing that like you're. And then but it threw you straight in, and you just sort of got the rules by doing the stuff.
Actually, here's a side note I kind of want to make. I'm glad you brought that game up, because I realized if you think of like demos, they try and do that same magic. The whole point of a demo, it doesn't always take place at the beginning. Sometimes it does, but they're always trying to do that hook. They're trying to find whatever that magic moment is in their game, which I'm finding now is often the beginning, because that's what developers are trying to do. But Metal Gear Solid is a prime example of that back on the PlayStation.
Just executed perfectly.
And it was the demo, and it was also the intro, and it was because it grabbed you and brought you in. So kind of the last one for me on this list, and then we can dig into it a little bit, is just did you play Dragon Age 2? It starts with Varric the dwarf telling I played on 360, but it starts with Varric the dwarf telling the story of his friend. And so what happens is he's telling this story, and he's telling you like you're a legend, and so it's kind of holding your hand because you're a badass. You one-shot everything. You're like, you have all these complex abilities, you have max spells.
That is a really cool way to do it.
You fight this dragon, and you're just like epic, and the dragon's flying in, and then she interrupts him, and she's like, that's bullshit. That's not how it went down. He's like, what do you mean? That's the legend. And then he's like, all right, I'll tell you what really happened. And then you're back to level 1, and then you like pick your path and all that stuff.
I actually like it when games do that, where you have, maybe it's cheesy, but like I kind of like it when you have like this big mighty power, and then you get like knocked down, and then you have to like kind of rebuild back up like toward the final boss. I think that's actually really cool, and that's a cool way to do it, is give you this limitless power, so you immediately feel comfortable and you feel the power of what you could be in this game.
It'll help you chase it,
and then you have to earn it back. So God of War 3 was kind of like that, where in the very opening, I think I made you play it. I just pestered you. I don't know if you ever did, but like
I played the opening.
Okay, yeah. So you're climbing up on the back of like these giant Gaia like rock gods or whatever, up Mount Olympus towards Zeus, and it's a cool thing. You actually get introduced to all the gods bosses that you'll fight along the way.
Yeah, you fight Poseidon.
Right? Yeah,
the water
you fight. Yeah, that's kind of the big fight of that. But it's just this huge, massive epic. You immediately get what God of War is about, and then you get thrown out into Hades, and you have to like climb your way back up to get your vengeance and stuff like that. Similar storytelling model.
Yeah, some games do that really well. Like, doesn't Metroid do that? I know I played a Game Boy Advance game called Metroid Fusion, where you like start out with the Samus suit and then you like lose it.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really cool way to tell stories in games.
Destiny 2 even did that.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of a cool intro as well.
Actually, that was a good opening, and I feel like that some of the stuff they did really got glossed over in all the hate, right? But it was cool to like go up against the boss and like kind of have all your power and then get knocked down and have to build your way back up. Yeah, I think it's a good way to introduce a story.
So I guess if you break that down, so some of those factors that like for me from those are like the epic scenes are a good way of like if they can charm you with the world right out of the gate.
Right.
Like kind of like what I was saying with Half-Life 2, how it's like you're fascinated by like what is this place I've found.
It's kind of the Alice in Wonderland sort of thing. You tumble down the rabbit hole and then you're immediately just in wonder.
Right.
Or
what have I stumbled
confusion
into?
Or mystery around everything around you.
And in that sense, it hooks you because you just want to know more.
Right.
You also have I think gripping action scenes like what we were talking about.
Yes.
Well, Uncharted, some of these hit on multiple, but like Final Fantasy VII where you're just right in the fight and you're like, this is cool. No hand holding. Let's do this. I think
we can't have this episode without mentioning BioShock and BioShock Infinite for sort of that Alice in Wonderland feel where you go to the lighthouse and then all of a sudden you're in this incredible world that like it then unfolds as you play through. But sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. So, and that's a good example of like the environments and stuff that you fall into. And then I think there's something too that starting immediately in a dire situation or overwhelming odds, like we've been talking about, I think there's something to that. I don't know what it is about the human psyche that's like, oh, I really like being in this situation.
Yeah.
But it certainly like draws you in.
Yeah. I mean, you immediately go into that like fight or flight type mode with that suspended disbelief. You know, you're not actually in danger, but like part of your brain just gets like sucked in. Like I have to fight to survive.
Right. And that need to survive or that need to make the character survive, I think helps draw you in. I think sometimes like a tragedy or something like that gives you like a stake in it, like Last of Us.
That's what I was going to say too. And I think I would term it differently, like where you said like the mystery of the world. I think you get pulled in with the depth of the character or the mystery of the character itself. Because with The Last of Us, you immediately feel like just such a deep sympathy and pain for Joel that you want to see how his story now unfolds after such a tragic loss.
Yeah, you're definitely invested in it because of like the way games work. You feel like you felt that loss too,
right?
So
it's like, how are we going to come back from this?
It's a tough one to go through. Pixar loves it, or Disney, like killing off parents, and oh my god, but it works, and it works really well.
I mean, if it's a character-focused game, which not all games are, but if it is, like, being sympathetic and wanting to root for that character is critical to a story-driven game.
Yeah, and I think a quick introduction of a mystery, if you can do it well, like Resident Evil, or even Breath of the Wild, like, I found myself this is part of that epic world, too, of mystery, but waking up as Link without any memories and no gear, I was like, what's happening?
Coming out of a cave and running into an old man, it really had that draw and that mystery.
And immediately being like,
what happened while you were asleep?
Something happened 100 years ago. What was it? Like, I was drawn in pretty much from the get-go by the mystery and and even though Link wasn't really a character, I guess like in that sense it really was like a mystery of the world, because though Link's memories were like, I felt surprisingly like I loved that. I loved finding his memories.
I did too. It added a little bit more depth to the Zelda Link relationship than I feel like a lot of other Zelda games have done.
Right. So why isn't this done more often? Like, not every game has this like
really good opening.
No. Or why not? Do you think it's tough to execute, or do you think they're trying and it's poorly executed and that's why we don't think?
I think it has to be difficult, right? I mean, like, I think you have to I don't know. For me, I don't know. I'm a little bit biased because for me personally, I think they're, like I said, like cinematics to me are lazy. But some people like a big epic cinematic that like throws them into something. And so I think it's really difficult to probably think through. You're making a good game that's supposed to be fun in terms of mechanics and world and all that kind of stuff. But part of what I like is character arc. And it's a lot of work to say, okay, the character starts here and we want them to end up here and we want it to be satisfying for the player. Now, what's the most meaningful, engaging, gripping, like to design one opening scene that you get all that right away is probably incredibly difficult.
That makes sense. I mean, it has to be. I'm not like a talented writer or anything, but just imagining trying to hook somebody that easily seems difficult, but so successful. It's like the stakes are so high, but I could easily, I mean, even going through these lists, these are some of my favorite games of all time.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I guess it's not always the best storytelling method. It's not like anybody who's read Lord of the Rings or anything. It's like right out of the gate, Hobbit Town, like the Shire's on fire. Like it's not,
it is,
it's like a long
warm up,
long journey
happening. Yeah.
But then again, like that story can be satisfying too. To the slow, the Tom Clancy method of building it all up. But I don't
think it has to be all action and guns though, because one of my favorites is Firewatch. The opening to Firewatch is it's not even any of the mechanics that are in the game. It's almost like a choose your own adventure style. There's like just some music and some colors and stuff, and then it's just text, and you choose, like on the surface of it, it's sort of like a not boring but sort of a straightforward drama story about a guy losing his wife or his girlfriend or whatever, and you just kind of make these choices, but it's so subtle. Like by the time you're done just making these dumb little text choices, you're like, how is this guy going on? How is he not totally devastated? And how is he like so I don't think it has to be just action and guns and that kind of stuff to be gripping. I think it wasn't even as action-packed as The Last of Us. There wasn't zombies. There was none of that. It was a story about a dude. But by the time you actually start playing the game, you just like care about this guy, and your heart breaks for this dude. And
I think my favorite games all kind of follow one of these. Like Chrono Trigger starts off kind of cutesy, but pretty quickly, like people are getting thrown into time, and it's like it's on. You have to save them. That's like within the first 10 minutes. Even Super Mario RPG starts out as like a standard showdown with Bowser, and quickly like a giant sword wrecks the kingdom. And you're like, it's all going down. Like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I think like my top 10 favorite games probably all start with like a it's on type intro. Not to say I don't like other games that don't do that. But.
Well, I mean, if I had one final thought on it, I think that is the way to use this media, that it's interactive and the players are there to, like we talked about in our movies episode, people don't want to watch a movie about Hitman. They want to strangle a guy with piano wire. They're there to take action and to be in that character's shoes. And if you're wasting your game opening with a movie, like you're squandering what makes games great, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's being personal and invested is why we game. So, I mean, why not get right to it? Like, let's get started.
Thank you for listening to Save Every Universe. If you enjoyed this episode, please go listen to all of our other episodes and give us money at patreon.com/Save Every Universe.